My brothers and sisters, I now bring you Rabbi Amichai Lalavi.
Good morning, my friends. Good day to family and friends from all over the world. It is such a deep, profound honor to be with you today, and I'm so deeply moved. And indeed, I wish I had Reverend Derek's box of tissues right with me right now. I'll do my best without it. It's really incredible to see all of our communities together. This is beloved community, and it is years in the making, and it is years more to go as we get beyond all the divides to build this one place of being. Thank you for this warm welcome on this and every day. You know, sharing words of faith or wisdom on any given day is a daunting task. How much more so on this day when we're honoring the life and legacy of Dr. King? How much more so at this moment in history, just days after our nation has witnessed one of the darkest days in our history. Days before the anticipation of a new chapter in our nation's history. With so much excited expectation. I wish we could just be so happy today for this inauguration this coming week with this chapter that so many of us have worked for and now working for. And yet we know that with all the joy of getting a reliable and decent and kind new leader and an incredible new vice president, our first woman and woman of color, along with him, with all this excitement, there is a great deal of anxiety and concern, and that's real. We are in the midst of one of the most concerning and complicated moments, the biggest crises this nation has known, of division and discord. We're in the middle of one of the most terrifying medical crises our species has known. Instead of coming together to battle the virus, we're seeing more fighting than ever over masks and vaccination, over the very nature of what is truth. What is love? And so the question is, how did we get here? And maybe a more important question is, how do we get out of here? That this spirit we are feeling here in this Zoom room this morning of faith and love and camaraderie, that is what we want and believe in. All of us. How do we get there? So I want to share two stories with you today, and a thought and a hope that these inspirational narratives will give us some tools, some guidance, some inspiration to lift our head high, to lean in deeper into the truth we know we are the heirs of, and to give us the courage and the compassion to speak truth to power, but begin with ourselves. I'm hopeful today, and like many of you, concerned. And so it is to the past that I go in order to be more present and look forward to the future. I want to start with one of these two stories. September 20th, 1958, in Harlem, not so far from the beloved St. James Church that I look forward to, as we all do, Reverend Derek, to be with you in person there again. On that day, 29-year-old Martin Luther King Jr., and I'm so grateful to know the origin of his name, Reverend Derek. Wow, we'll come back to that. On that day, he was at a department store in Harlem signing copies of his new book called Stride Towards Freedom, The Montgomery Story. A long line of people. One of them was a woman by the name of Isola Curry, an African-American woman who would later be, unfortunately, identified as schizophrenic. She lurched towards King with a letter opener and stabbed him in the chest. Motives unclear. King was rushed to the hospital, Harlem Hospital, in critical condition. The doctors told him, had you sneezed, he would have died. But he survived. And there in the hospital, he received a visit from one of his mentors, one of our teachers. Howard Thurman was one of King's mentors. He was about 30 years older. He was a colleague of King's father, whom we heard of earlier today. At the time, he was the dean of Marsh Chapel in Boston University, and that's where he knew King from. Thurman, as you heard Reverend Derek talk about briefly today, was an impressive and important character in American and religious and African American history. He was a philosopher and a theologian, a mystic, a civil rights leader, an author, a man of faith and vision. In the 1930s, he traveled to India to meet with Gandhi. And there he really understood the merit of nonviolence and the importance of the spirit to the work of civic change. He came back and he taught that gospel. A lot of the non-resistance work that we are familiar with that King and others took came because of Thurman. And we are eternally grateful to him for that. This will be some of what Reverend Derek and I will be teaching in this course we're starting this Thursday. Thurman and King did not meet often, but that hospital meeting was pivotal. What we know from it that Thurman told King to rest. He said to him, your body needs healing, your soul needs healing. Take 2 weeks off from your sacred work. Find time to meditate, to pray, to ask yourself about your life's purpose, to reconnect to your source. If you don't recharge inside, you will be useless outside, Thurman said to him. And King, as we are told, at first resisted. There's so much work to be done. Thurman said, listen to me, go in, and then you'll be able to go out. In a letter that King wrote to Thurman several weeks later, he said, I'm following your advice on this question. We know the rest. King briefly rested, deeply moved by the tradition of spirit he had inherited, did the work he did to give us the dream that we are still trying to achieve. And a decade after that first assassination attempt, there was one that so tragically succeeded. What I find so compelling about the story of Thurman and King is the story of mentorship. The wisdom of the elder leader who knew how to coach the younger leader, not just on the public work, but on the private work, on what does it mean to spiritually, soulfully connect to self? What does it mean to go inside before you go outside? This would be Thurman's life's work, and in so many ways, King's legacy to us. For all the ways we've been involved in Black Lives Matter and in social change demands these last years, especially this last year, it is so incredible to see that taking a moment to breathe, taking a moment to pray is part of the struggle. It is not marginal. That the work of spirit is critical to the work of social civic change. But I think there's much more that needs to be done in this department. As we fight racism, as we fight oppression, and all the systemic ways in which we get to be marginalized and victimized, hand in hand with the call of justice is the call of spirit, the inner life. This is the why and how of the work towards repair. Thurman taught King that in so many deep ways as we are taught today. Now look, I'm preaching to the choir, right? We are in a church here with members of congregations, Jewish, Christian, other perhaps, preaching about the importance of religious practice and religious life to the activation of social change. But what I think is important for all of us, as perhaps our teachers and leaders have learned in the past, that religion can be the tool for change, but it can also be the tool of oppression. Religion can be the virus, and it can be the vaccination. It can be the virus because the religion that many of us have inherited is full of grace, but it's also full of, I'm better than you. I grew up in a loving Judaism where nevertheless, men count more than women, and straight count more than gay, and humans count more than animals. And in some contexts, white count more than colored. That's what we inherited, but that's what we're here to fix. Like Martin Luther King Sr. understood, like the original Martin Luther understood, like Jesus understood, like so many Jewish, Christian, Muslim, other leaders understood and understand. But we still have to work on, because last week in the Capitol, there were people there standing in the name of religion. And they stormed that room that says, in God we trust there. And we know how much abuse in the name of God we have seen over the centuries. So yes, the spiritual religious path can be the vaccination, but it can also be the virus. And so it's on to us to understand deep inside how we will appreciate the inner life, our inner life, to find the discord so we can fix. Understand how we are part of the problem, but we can be part of the solution. We must. Because there are files in our hard drive that must be eradicated. There's work that we must do as a collective, a global collective, but it's got to start inside. We've got to overcome by first going inside. Here's a second story we already heard today to illustrate this point that I'm trying to get to. The importance of the inner life, as we heard beautifully from Reverend Derek, articulating the story of Eli and Samuel. And thank you, Andrea, for reading it so beautifully, as you always do, with the scriptures come alive. So in this story that I haven't heard in so long and was so delighted to prepare for today, we are rewinding thousands of years ago. We are in the land of Israel, in the place called Shiloh, a name holy to this congregation and to the African-American Christian community. Shiloh was the tabernacle where the Hebrew people, our ancestors, worshipped. And there was an old priest there. His name was Eli, and his sons. And they were a corrupt religious structure. Not exactly clear why, but there was a problem there with that religious leadership. And that young boy, Samuel, who was given to God through his mother's prayers, is there in service. And as the word of the story begins, the boy Samuel was ministering to God under Eli. The word of God was rare in those days. Visions were not widespread. An interesting beginning of the story. There was a moment where there was a disconnect between the vision of the divine and what people were saying. Religion was there, but was it serving the need? Young boy Samuel is sleeping at the foot of the holy ark, and the old man is sleeping in the back, and 3 times the young boy hears the voice, Shmuel. Thinks it's the old priest, once and twice. Then the old man mentors him as Thurman mentored King and says, listen to the call. You are being called, boy. All you have to say is, here I am, I'm listening. Hineni, here I am. And what young Samuel hears is devastating. He hears that the religious establishment that he's serving, this old man who just counseled him, is part of the problem. It's part of the paradigm that must shift. What is this young boy to do about that? How do you address the fact that the religion you are serving and were born into is problematic? What call do you hear inside to become who you need to become as a change maker, as a change agent? In Samuel's case, a great prophet, a kingmaker, a very complex character, which we won't get into right now. The thing is, Samuel paid attention because he had a mentor like King And because he listened to the inner call, not just the outer call, he went inside, beyond language, beyond words like Lord or Adonai, beyond the religion that he inherited with all of its beauty and faults. He went inside to hear the inner call that is beyond language, as we are all invited, instructed, always and right now, to do. Eli, like Thurman, was a spiritual mentor. The critical role of mentors in our lives to give us the information, the invitation to go inside and hear the inner call that sometimes is very dramatic and calls on us to truly question what we inherited, what is the past, so that we can reimagine the present and chart a new future. Why does the inner life matter so much? We heard the words of Dr. King earlier today. This is the way to step forward. But I want to suggest that what really happens when we go inside, when we hear the inner call, as King did, when he learned his father's teaching, but went deeper inside, as Samuel did, as so many did. Once we go really, really inside, we understand that underneath all the differences, white and black, Jewish and Christian, gay and straight, woman and man, other, there is really one, that we are deeply interconnected, that we are singly living as an ecosystem, all living beings on this planet and maybe others. And therefore we have the moral responsibility for each other to transcend the differences that we've been taught. That only happens when you go deeply inside to understand that we are deeply connected as one. We say these words 1,000 times, but they're often just words. They will only be activated towards understanding and action if we do the work of going inside, hearing the inner call, practicing, cleaning the debris of thousands of generations of fear and hostility and walls and fences to find that which connects us within, which in some ways is what's happening here today on this Zoom call, which is nothing less than a miracle of gratitude, but only the beginning of our work. Only introspection will bring us to realize that we are truly one, and that what we have to do is work tirelessly to never forget that we are loved as one, and that we must love as one, including those whom we can't stand, and that's hard. The hatred that we witnessed last week in the sacred chamber of our democracy, on the streets and on the screens of the world, is one that comes from the forgetfulness that we are truly one and responsible for each other, from the lies that some religious paths have spread, that some are better than others and others are threats to who we are. Those are lies, political lies, religious lies, fearful lies. And we are here to uncover the truth, that truly we are one in the multiplicity of many. We know this. But how do we internalize and actualize this? Alice Walker, one of our greatest teachers, artists, and prophets, said the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. Well, we have power to witness the color purple and to notice, to go inside and to remember. There can be no civic change if we don't change within. To remember truly that we are members of one family, truly responsible for each other, beyond the so-called differences of the pigments of our skin, or the nature of our gender, or who we love, or who we voted for. That is not the point. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I think we need to remember this again and again and again. I know I do. Because the fear of other, the division towards other keeps coming up. The judgment that is fear-based, only with a deep, deep inner work that gatherings such as these can help us get beyond. Today, on the world calendar, is something called World Religion Day. It was created by the Baha'i movement, an interesting ecumenical movement that really believes that we are all one. And many houses of worship all over the world are marking this weekend and this day as World Religion Day that believes what we're saying right now. Underneath all the differences, religion could be the virus, but it can and must be the vaccine for human suffering. That we are really one, and we can fix the toxic past that we inherited, the words of faith that both unite and disconnect us and go deeper and higher to achieve the goals that Dr. King believed in, and Thurman, and in his way, Eli, and the paradigm of religion that was replaced by Samuel, and the countless prophets, all the way to Alice Walker, all the way to our heroes and heroines walking the earth right now, to remind us that underneath all this discord, all this hatred that got us to this moment, there is the possibility of paradigm shift, of a spiritual, civic, courageous, compassionate reality that we know, and in so many ways we have forgotten. I hope today we don't. We got here through hate, but we will get through this through love. We got here through fear. We will come out of this through courage and patience and trust and the inner work we must each do to discover that call inside that calls us, as that voice called Samuel and King, and each one of us by name, to believe that we are loved, all of us, and we have purpose to add more love to the world. The Beatles were right. All you need is love. And then hard work to go inside and to take it to the public sphere. We have a big week ahead. May this week bring more love than violence. May this week bring hope and joy. May this week bring healing and health all over the world. May we see the light within and beyond as this tunnel becomes a bridge, and this bridge becomes a ballroom, and this ballroom becomes an ocean of joy. Yes, there is much to be anxious about, but let's take a moment now to breathe in appreciation of this gift of life that we are sharing with each other right now. Please take a deep breath with me. Thank you. Thank you for welcoming me again and again to share words and to build community together, to build beloved community together, to my friend and mentor, my teacher, Reverend Derek. Blessings and gratitude for your leadership, friendship, and courage. To my friends from Lab Shul and St. James, to friends I'm seeing here from all over the world, may we together find the ways to go inside, to recognize where the virus is and our own vaccinations, so we can become the change agents we want to be in the world. The prophets, the artists, the lovers, united by our love of life. Thank you, friends, for this invitation. As we say in Hebrew, Shavua Tov, good week. May we enjoy appreciate, and rise. And may America this week rise, rise, rise. Amen.
Amen.